Hello and welcome to episode 4 of the Shire Knights podcast, where we take a look at the competitive 40k scene up here in Scotland and beyond. As we are already a week behind, and also more than one take behind on this podcast, we're going to do away with witty introductions. I shall just introduce you to my fellow knights that are joining me today. So we have Ryan Rybo Kerr. Hello, Ryan.
Hello, hello, hello.
Fantastic. And we have Alan Davison. Hey. Hey, there we go. So, as I say, we're going to have a wee focus on tournament reviews this weekend because last weekend the Knights were out in force across Scotland with 2 tournaments taking place. There was the Clash of Alba tournament up in Bathgate, where Ryan, Alan, Nicholas, Connor. Is that right? Is there anyone else I missed from that?
No, that was the 4 of us.
Four of you guys were up there, and my lonesome self was down at Dominion in Ayr for the West of Scotland GT number 2. So what we'll do, I think, let's have a wee chat about lists we took to this, and then we'll run through. I think both of them were 5-round tournaments. So we'll run through each round, and we'll chat about our games a wee bit and what we learned, how things went, all that jazz. If that sounds good, guys.
Yeah, sounds great to
Sounds
me.
good. Fantastic. Right, let's start then. Let's go. Alan, actually, I'm going to pick on you first. You can tell me, what did you take to Clash of Alba?
Excellent. So I took Death Guard to Clash Alba, and it's a list that I've been running for nearly over a year now. Slight different adaptations based on points coming in, but it's a list that's based on shooting with a bit of defensive combat. So my list consists of the lovely 3 Volkites with the Contemptors, which are great. A lot of firepower coming out of them with the Tallyman giving them 1+1 to hit, 6s exploding, and a couple that with a Demon Prince for reroll ones. Now, as long as you're not playing against Harlequins, that's quite alright. You're getting some nice rerolls or anything that doesn't switch up rerolls. And then I'm still sticking at the moment with 3 Plague Burst Crawlers.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still on the fence. They obviously took a massive nerf, which was evident over this weekend, and I'll get into that as it goes, but the out-of-line of sight shooting is now almost, it's so ineffective. It doesn't shift anything, which is great to see because it was, I suppose, kind of a broken mechanic when you're shooting out-of-line of sight and you can just pop things that wouldn't necessarily be able to be popped normally.
That's one thing I was going to actually ask you, Alan. You've certainly beaten me to the curve there, where it was because this is your first tournament since the outline site rules changed, or was there one of the RTTs for that?
No, I think this is the first tournament that I've been to with the. Yeah, no, it's the first tournament that I've been to with the outline
So
being in effect.
Definitely be interesting to hear, like you say, foreshadowing how that went a wee bit, but definitely hear it against different opponents. One other question before we jump onto the next list. You've taken your Death Guard plenty, you're well versed in them.
Yes.
Anyone who isn't familiar with the tournament scene, everyone obviously submits their lists before a certain deadline and then it's revealed what everyone is taking. Stuff in the meta right now, nasty bugs, dancing clowns, fish boys in robot suits. What were you thinking what were you expecting to see going into this, and did you think about changing your Death Guard or just the way you played it?
Yeah, so with Armour of Contempt coming out, it was a chance maybe to run more Terminators, and I had tried that and we had practiced a few games at the local club and with the other Knights, and it was okay, but I felt that the current list that I had, I think just because of the way that I've got it fine-tuned on scoring how to go, I think going up against any sort of Tyranids list at the moment is very difficult to play against if you don't go first. So in that sense, I was like, well, if I take just all Terminators, I'm not going to be able to do much to Harpies that are flying about, or a flying Hive Tyrant that comes in and just smashes you in turn, and a turn then disappears, and you're looking, going, where did it go?
Yeah.
Or even if you run in and you hit it first and it dies and it hits you back anyway, so it's kind of difficult in that sense. Harlequins and Eldari, really difficult to play with, just because of the scoring, where sticking with the Volkites and the Plague Burst Crawlers, as well as Death Shroud and other bits and pieces in the army, just allows for that bit of scoring, but also a nice amount of shots just going through, which can pick up a lot of units, which is probably where most of the army really excels in, because you're not used to getting that many shots through and then it explodes and then it keeps going, and when it spikes hard.
Yeah.
Which is nice. And it normally does when you're rerolling ones and you're hitting on twos and you're exploding sixes, and then your -1 toughness and all the things just stack up and it just works nicely.
Weight of dice in the end, sort of thing. Drown your
Yeah,
opponent. You
yeah,
might be
definitely.
hard to hit, but when you've got 100 shots, a few of those will go through.
Yeah.
Nice.
No, definitely.
Well, let's move on then, Ryan. What did you take to Clash of Alba?
Well, like Alan, with the kind of armor contempt buffs coming in, I've taken Grey Knights, and I went quite heavily into the armor contempt just to test it out, really give it a kind of maximum effort, see just how it can do. And I've taken 28 paladins.
Yep.
So I had 2 units of 9 and 1 unit of 10. I then had, the Mortal Wound Librarian. I had Apothecary, Caldor Drago, and a Chaplain. And then 2 normal strike squads, and that was the entire list. I decided to try and... I know how much of a threat Nids is to the current meta, and how much of a threat it is to that list. It's nice having the 5-up save against Mortals, but it doesn't save you all the time against Nids just now. Really, I tried to spec into stopping Nids, and I taken Ward Makers as my faction. One, because I can turn off obsec auras and stuff like that coming from marine armies with the armor contempt coming up. It's quite handy to have that. The Ward Maker's special psychic power is pick a unit and they cannot benefit from friendly auras. But then also the Warlord trait for Ward Makers is if you cast a psychic power on an unmodified 8 or more, it cannot be denied. So that went on the Mortal Wound Librarian alongside his +1 to his Mortal Wound output. So it couldn't get denied, even if it got lowered by the Synapse range, Shadow of the Warp. That's the special rule. Yep. If Shadow of the Warp interfered with it, it wasn't getting stopped by that either. It was just really clutch to try and get the Mortal Wound output, because that's where the damage comes from the list. The rest of the list is really tough, but the Mortal Wounds kind of needs to go off consistently.
Talking a wee bit about that toughness, actually, because previously you've been running like loads of purifiers, haven't you?
Yeah.
You've pivoted to lots of Terminator bodies, and I'm not sure I've seen too many Paladins this edition. Admittedly, not too many Grey Knights, but definitely not Paladins. What are Paladins doing for you if you're taking nearly 30 of them?
So Paladins are much like the Terminators. Sadly, so Grey Knights get the Troop option, which is just standard Terminators. They then get the Elite option, which is Paladins. Paladins have an extra weapon skill, so they hit on 2s and an extra attack each. So each Paladin has 4 attacks base, and the Sergeant has 5. Mm-hmm. The unit itself can take any 2 psychic powers from their discipline. So I was giving them all Hammer Hand and giving them all Armored Resilience. Hammer Hand lets them reroll all wounds, and Armored Resilience gives them +1 to their save. So theoretically, if you're in the Tide of Shadows, you get Armored Resilience off and Armor of Contempt. You technically have a -1 save with this unit, as long as you're getting the benefits of cover. It's really strong for the unit. It makes them incredibly durable. most things you're saving on a 2-up or a 3-up.
Yeah.
It just makes them incredibly tanky, and then you've got an apothecary next to them, giving them a 6-up field of pain against anything,
Oh,
and then they've got a 5-up field of pain against mortals. So yeah, it's a very durable list, and really the list plays around to the last.
Yeah, definitely.
It,
If you're taking those three huge
yeah.
bodies of them,
Majority of
is
the
it?
time it was just to the last and banners and just sitting there going, "You need to move me."
I know that feeling. But just a quick question, I suppose. Their elites choices, do they have access to OBSEC, or are they just going to be like killing
So
anything that's on objective?
So yeah, I had OBSEC in the list. So the chaplain had aura. The Grey Knight, all characters and core get OBSEC,
Like
and
Rights of War for
yeah,
Marines.
it's like Rights of War, but it's for Grey Knights.
Mhm.
And then additionally, I had on the apothecary, I had a noble death, which is one of the you pay points for kind of upgrades. So it's 15 points, I believe, or it could be 20. Can't remember off the top of my head. But it's a once per game used in the command phase, and he gets an obsec aura for a turn. So
Nice.
if you had normal obsec troops on an objective with the obsec aura of the chaplain and the obsec aura of the apothecary, they are triple obseced. So they count each Grey Knight would count as 3 models instead of 1. Paladins don't have obsec, so technically if you layered that buff, they count as 2 models each on an
Oh,
objective.
they're only 2 models each.
Yeah,
Gosh,
I
nothing.
know. How horrible. But it
Oh,
did come in super clutch. A lot of the time, I had like the 10-man unit running up with the apothecary, the chaplain, the librarian, and Caldor, and just taking stranglehold, taking banners, putting the 2 other units on the other objectives if it's a 5-objective mission, and then just planting on the middle and saying, "You need to move me." It worked out really well.
cool. It sounds like a bit of a brick to try and break through that list, especially like you say with Armor of Contempt being quite a nice thing. And I think you touched on it a wee bit there, trying to sort of, get a list that could take NIDs, as we're expecting to see that in the meta. And then you've got plenty of like protection against mortal wounds. You can do your own denies. Grey Knight's getting that +1 to the deny and stuff like that. It sounds like it's a good choice against the NIDs at the moment. I will quickly run through my list for Dominion, but what I took, I was taking the Blue Boys, I was taking the Tau Empire, but it was mostly Kroot, to be honest. I took the Daleth Sept, which is its Sept tenants are everything counts as in light cover if it's not an engagement range, which is just nice. It's sort of almost like an Armor of Contempt in a wee bit. But that only applies to your Tau Empire units, so Crisis Suits, Fire Warriors, Commanders, Ethereals, things like that. Second part of that sept is kind of interesting. So if you have any alien auxiliaries in a Daleth sept detachment, so alien auxiliaries being your any types of Kroot, any flavour of Kroot or Vespid, they benefit from tactical philosophy that you would normally see. So most of the time it will be Mont'ka. So suddenly you're getting Kroot that can move and advance and count as remaining stationary, which is less good since the nerf. Used to be able to get Kroot rifles with like hordes of Kroot rifles with AP1, rerolling ones to hit when they're within 18 and stuff like that. They're rapid fire with the pre-game move and then moving 7 and stuff like that. You could get them quite up the board quite quickly. So I think in the end it was only 60 Kroot in the end. A Shaper, a couple of commanders, took the Enforcer commander to give a squad of Crisis OBSEC, and he was also the Donkey Punch commander. So he's got the Onager Gauntlet, which is a Strength 12 Power Fist in effect. And then he's got the Relic Flamer, which he can use in combat as well. So surprisingly decent in combat. He's got the Precision of the Hunter Warlord trait, which means he rerolls all hits and all wounds, which when you're doing that for both shooting and in combat, he becomes a bit of a melee stick, to be honest. I took a wee Crisis Commander. He was a new addition. I used to be taking a Cold Star Commander, but it's just when those Crisis units get tagged, having the Crisis Commander who can look at something and say, oh, you now can fall back and shoot, and you take no to hit modifiers when you shoot. It's just quite useful, because the next part of my list is 2 massive blobs of Crisis suits, tooled up to the teeth with double plasma and cyclic, so plenty of sort of anti-tank or anti-elite shots in there, plenty of shield drones to protect them, few marker drones to help with the shooting, and a bit like what you were saying, Ryan, I'm sort of building for to the last there, because I had 2 squads of 5, Crisis with loads of drones, and the Enforcer Commander were my 3 to the last. And then some other stuff I was tinkering with. I took 2 squads of 2-man Crisis Bodyguards. So obviously Bodyguard's pretty rubbish now. But what's quite fun with them, to be honest, I was sticking Flamers and Plasma on them. They also benefit from being turned into OBSEC. And then what you can do is you can throw them forward 10 inches, and there's a strat to auto-advance a battlesuit 6 inches. So 16-inch OBSEC, 2-man unit, just a nice way to sort of threaten your opponent's primary a wee bit with small units and stuff like that. And then a few Vespid for doing things like R&D and engage if needed and stuff like that. And I think that's really my list, sort of thing. Not quite the sort of Farsight or Tau Sept that you're seeing at the top tables at the moment, but I just love Kroot. Had to take as many Kroot as possible. So yeah, that was my list. What we'll do, let's jump into everyone's first round games. So, Alan, pick on you first.
Yes.
First round, Clash of Alba. Now, there'll be slight differences here when we start talking our rounds, because the big difference between Clash of Alba and Dominion, West of Scotland 2, was terrain. Was whether it's player placed or preset terrain. Clash of Alba was preset, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, it was all preset. Most of it was WTC terrain as well. Team Scotland brought a lot of their own terrain for this one, so it wasn't like the last Clash of Alba, which was a lot of more traditional style terrain, the GW kits, and then some MDF kits and stuff like that. This time it was all pretty much the WTC standard big L's. I think there was either 4 big L's or 6 big L's on your table, depending on which table you were on, but there was loads of big line of sight blocking terrain on this one.
That's good. So, Alan, first round, what did you go into?
So first round we went into Chris Mills running Sisters of Battle.
Nice.
Team Scotland. So
And what was the mission? Do you remember?
the mission was recover the relics. So 6 objective mission. And this one is the secondary part of the primary is killing stuff. And Chris had a really good list. It's your normal, Celestine, is it Morvenval?
Yeah.
Retributors. What's the boys with the big swords?
Repentia?
Repentia, that's the one. He had plenty of Repentia, which I'll come in a bit because it was quite funny what I had to do with the Repentia. But I knew this was always going to be a tough game. With a 6 objective mission, with Sisters on the board, he had the 2 Rhinos making the pre-game moves. It was always going to be tough because I felt that he could play defensive if he wants, he can play attacking if he wants. It was really in his court for what his game would be. Because just the maneuverability that he had over what I could do, and with, as Ryan said, the terrain with 3 big L's and line of sight blocking, it does create a bit more difficulty when you're trying to create those lanes to then shoot off the backfield objectives, trying to get to them, because Death Guard are generally a slower army. So in this game I decided to take banners, grind, because I felt that he had to come to me for some things that he wanted to do if he wanted to shut me down from doing banners. So I thought I'm definitely, hopefully, going to kill more than him each turn, because I suspected he was going to take to the last, so I thought he was going to play more defensive. And then I risked it with Stranglehold. Stranglehold's always that risky sort of one on a 6 objective mission, because if they do just manage to survive with a unit on the point, then you can sometimes sacrifice that, or if they come across and try and take stuff with OBSEC units, it can be quite difficult. So I managed to win first turn,
Mhm.
which was massive. His miracle dice rolls were not the greatest. I think he rolled 5 2s for the first few miracle dice that he
Oh
got,
no.
so that kind of helped as well. He did something unusual. He put his rhinos at the side, and then he moved them onto the points, which at the time I thought, okay, that's fine. He's trying to deny me stranglehold from the first turn and maybe put them out and then drop the obsec. But with the way I was able to maneuver the tanks into position and the Volkites in, I was able to destroy one side completely off the point. The
Mhm.
other side I was able to destroy a bit off, but a few things survived. But I knew if I just concentrated on one side, just to keep getting the stranglehold and then eventually try and move out. But he had a lot of repentia, deep strike. He had these is it the Retributors with the melter? Is that the
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, he had them in deep strike. He had Celestine in deep strike, and again he took banners to the last, and he took stranglehold as well. He took
Mhm.
stranglehold as well. And what happened in this game was a lot of trading.
Yeah.
the the Repentia, his 3 groups of Repentia, all they went into all game was cultists and poxwalkers, which is not where he was wanting to put them. But that's where he had to trade the points. So he would come in, kill a bunch, and then it would be like the trade off again. I would come in with an offside unit, take the point, shoot him off the point, and then it was just reversal on that. The one thing that helped was in turn 3, I decided to come fully out with my Death Shroud at that point. They had been hiding on one point for a while, and it was to deter him from coming that side with having the Foul Blight spawn and everything else there. And then I pushed out at that point. It brought down his Retributors to fire in, and unfortunately, I think they only managed to kill one Death Shroud. So at that point, when they killed one Death Shroud, the rest moved up, took him off those points, and then they were able just to sit. I was able to put a massive amount of units on one point, and with the Death Shroud having obsec, it meant that he then wasn't able to score max primary at the end because he went second.
Uh,
So it was a close game, but just because of the new changes with the Terminators having obsec
I
now,
was about to say then that's
yeah,
already paying dividends.
yeah, definitely, definitely. Because it's always been a thing. Although the bodyguard rule was um, good for Death Guard before because you could put a unit out. Sisters could also do the same, they could have Morphin
Yeah.
Pals sitting at a point. We actually joked about that when we were playing the game. We would just have 2 out in the open just waving at each other, sort of thing, and nothing really ever happening. But in this sense, with them having that obsec, it always meant that even if he was to chuck something over because of the massive amount of bodies on the point, he would never be able to take it. So that deterred him from one side, which played well into the tactics. And that game, I believe, finished something like 95-79 to myself. So,
Nice.
um,
I
I
think,
think the
like you
only
said, just focusing down one side, you're needing to get those grind points anyway. So that trading is important. But if you can just like push on one side, you're sort of guaranteeing your stranglehold, and then obsec terminators, like you say, definitely
yeah,
welcome.
yeah, no, definitely, definitely. It was. I thought it was going to be really tough going into it. I hadn't really played against sisters. I think the only other
Mhm.
time I had done that was at the Nottingham GT when I went up against Vic VJ's Soup List, which was Grey Knights and Sisters,
Mm.
um, which was a very interesting list. It was almost like the 2 best halves of each of the army that he was playing. So it was nice to go into a full Sisters army, but Celestine came down, zipped back up the next turn. Morven Val never got near her, just because of the way that I was playing down one side, and I knew I didn't have to get them, but if I got them, it would be nice.
Yeah.
And one thing with To the Last is it kept his one squad of Retributors till the very end game. They only came out at the very end to do a bit of shooting because they couldn't sacrifice 5 points. But in that game, I was shooting out of line of sight for a few turns to try and clear some stuff off the point, and you were lucky between 3 out of line sight shots if I was killing 1 or 2 in the whole game. So then it just becomes a point where you just stop shooting out of line of sight and you just shoot what's in front of you.
Yeah, I mean, the cannons are okay, even when you're not shooting line of sight. But I suppose, especially on our boards like this, you're going to get -1 to your ballistic skill, and then you're probably shooting over dense cover, or it's going to
Yeah,
be a bit
yeah,
annoying to maneuver.
yeah. So then it was like fives, and then it becomes more difficult, and then you're just not getting. And even if you roll, because it's a D6 shots, if you roll a 1, then you're really scuppered for trying to get anything.
Mm. No, but a good win overall, like you say, especially if
Yeah,
you've not played it since, and Sister's got a wee bit of buff with their own armor of contempt and more miracle dice sort of thing. So sounds like a good win to
yeah.
start
And,
off with.
and Chris was a great player as well.
Good, good. Well, yeah, I've played Chris as well. I've always had a good laugh with him. It's good to see him back on the competitive scene as well.
Yeah.
Ryan, first round opponent?
Yeah, my first round opponent was Ted. Ted Blackwell. It was his first tournament, so it was awesome. I just kind of went in with the positive attitude of Shire Knights and tried to make it as good a first game as you could. He was running Space Wolves. It had 2 Redemptor Dreadnoughts, some Wolf Guard. He had the Hounds of Morkai, I think they're called, the anti-psyker wolves, which was quite interesting with the Grey Knight matchup.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a great first game. 6 objectives, so it played really well for my army. The secondaries I taken was Raise the Banners, Purifying Ritual, and To the Last. So basically everything I can max by just staying in my half of the deployment. And Ted taking Oath of Moment, Assassinate, and Raise the Banners. He couldn't take a Pour because he actually had a Rune Priest in his list.
Yeah. Okay.
So yeah, that kind of scuppered him for that. But he had Oath, and he had I don't give a lot for no prisoners and all that, so he just had to take Assassinate because I have 4 characters, so I give 13 for that. So the way that I played it was basically he really has to come to me. The biggest threat on the table was the 2 Dreadnoughts, which I couldn't really do much to. I just kind of ignored them, or I just taken the brunt of their hits. Transhuman, I think on one turn both Dreadnoughts were poised to shoot into one unit of Terminators and they couldn't really see any others, so I just transhumaned the unit. I spent 3 CP doing it because Grey Knights can transhuman any of their troops, but it does cost 2 CP for a 5-man unit or 3 CP for anything greater than a 5-man unit. So it's a real kick in the CP, but it works out really well because instead of wounded on 2s, the plasmas were wounded on 4s, and it stopped a lot of that from hitting me. And then the Librarian managed to pick up a Dreadnought in that game. But yeah, just playing quite... Yeah, he done like 17 mortal wounds to he almost maxed out his damage. It was pretty crazy, and he wasn't able to deny it. So
you're just sitting there cackling, "Welcome to competitive 40k, mate."
It was basically I'd say, "Here's my wall, mate. You need to try and burst my wall." That's just what has to happen this game. So he was just throwing everything at me, trying to burst me. Unfortunately for his Oath of Moment as well, because I went first, so I kind of managed to get my troops out, get their armor up. Then it went to his turn, so I managed to get all my armor psychic powers off. I managed to get my channels and my banners raised in the first turn. I positioned my troops in a way that I could do that because basically one of the characters would raise the banners, one of the characters would channel, and then the paladin unit on the objective would then do their armor. And I'd do that for the other objective, the kind of 2 forward objectives. I would do that. And then for the back objectives, I just had a unit of 9 paladins and a unit of 5 strike squads on it. So one of them raised the banners, one of them purified ritual on that. So yeah, the game ended 98-67. I dropped 2 points on banners because he managed to get an obsec unit. A unit of incursors just ran up the board and advanced and managed to get one guy on an objective that I didn't have obsec on, flipped the point off for a turn, which cost me 2 points, and then I kind of smacked them back.
So barely won it then, only 98.
Yeah, so I managed to drop my 2 points there. But no, it was a great game. And it was really good. I managed to stop a few oaths of moment as well for causing some space wolves to run away
Mhm.
and just try to deny as many points and assassinate. I believe he only killed Caldor Drago. So
Oh,
Caldor,
really?
yeah, Caldor managed to whiff a round of attacks, but he died and gave 3 points for assassinate. Whereas the librarian, chaplain, and Apoc were still alive and kicking at the end. And ultimately, the once he lost all his troops and he was left with the dreadnoughts, he didn't really have a lot of steam left to try and get me off these points. He managed to get one of the paladin units down to, I believe it was one paladin left in the squad. And then for the next 2 turns after that, I just used the apothecary to bring it back up to a 3-man squad just to secure me my 5 points for to the last. And they managed to, and then getting dreadnoughts locked in combat and stuff like that with the bigger squads just kind of put a halt to it. But it was a great first game. Absolute brilliant opponent, and I think he enjoyed it as well, which was the most important thing. You know, his first tournament. I wanted to
Yeah.
make sure he was having a good game.
Definitely. Well, it sounds good. Definitely good result for you, and good, always best to have just like good fun, especially with folk who are new to the scene and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I'll quickly run through my first game. So my first game was actually tear down their icons, which for anyone who doesn't know, it is the plant explosives mission. So sort of a strange sort of diagonal deployment zone, 5 objectives, and you've got to plant bombs as your sort of mission specific primary or secondary, whatever you want to call it, in your opponent's half the board. Now I played a regular from Dominion who was Connell, who also played Tau, so it was Tau mirror match, game 1. He has this wonderfully bright pink Tau army, which oddly enough, not the only bright pink Tau army at Dominion that weekend. There were 2 players who had bright pink Tau. He was running Tau Sept. Not too dissimilar to my core of my list, I suppose. He didn't have as nearly as many Kroot as me, but he had 2 big blobs of Crisis. He had Shadow Sun. He had some Pathfinders. He had a Ghost Keel, Devilfish, lots of that sort of goodness. In this one, I took Stranglehold to the last, which I think I might have taken to the last in pretty much every game, and then raised the banners. And Connell took Stranglehold as well. Took no prisoners, which against me, again, I think probably 90% of my opponents will do, because my list gives up an easy 15 for that if you're just killing Kroot and drones and stuff like that. And then he also took Retrieve Nakmund. I got first turn, I think, in that one. I actually can't remember who got first turn. What I do remember is, let me see if I've got it written down here. Who got first for that? Oh, of course, that's the one thing I've missed off on ITC. I can't remember who went first in that. I think he might have actually gone first because he also had a unit of stealth suits, and he did the sort of homing beacon thing where you bring down a unit of Crisis from Manta Strike turn 1 and do all the rerolls to shooting. Now, this was quite useful for me because this is where all my shield drones did their job, and I think he might have killed 1 Crisis suit from a unit, because I started putting stuff on the Iridium armor Crisis suit when you're trying to get rid of drones. He sort of tanks that with a 1-up save usually, especially he's got 2 up and always counts as in light cover. And then what I just was able to do was just focus fire back at that 1 unit, get rid of it. That's a good chunk of his army gone, and start moving Kroot onto objectives, especially for Stranglehold. So I think it was just sort of weathering the storm when he sort of brought in big units of Crisis suits and then counter punching. Worked quite well, to be honest. I ended up, I think it was 93 to 57. My mistake, I took banners, and then because he definitely got first turn, because what he did first turn was just absolutely hurl a devilfish at me. And so on one of my objectives, I wasn't able to take a banner up for a few turns, trying to get rid of this devilfish sort of thing, while also focusing on these Crisis suits. But I managed to hold on to sort of Stranglehold, stop him getting into the centre by piling Kroot or Obsec, Crisis bodyguards into the middle and stuff like that. But a really enjoyable game in the end. I don't know if you guys find this with tear down the icons. Didn't really bother starting to plant bombs until turn 4 or 5 sort of thing. I've only got myself recorded as planting one bomb this whole game.
When I play Tear the Icons, I rarely plant any bombs.
Yeah.
it's a very rare opportunity for me to plant bombs, especially with my list that I was running. There was definitely no bombs getting planted with a unit of 10
it takes a whole
paladins.
unit out, doesn't it?
Yeah.
To do so. And I mean, I think you'd rather put your firepower into the enemy rather than to planting a bomb that they, if they want to, can defuse next turn, sort of thing. So yeah, really enjoyable game. Connell's absolute great laugh to play against. He has this sort of printed devilfish, and it's bright pink, and we just kept calling it the hairdryer all game because it's just this giant pink block that ended up in my lines and having to deal with this hairdryer. But really good laugh, really good game. And so that was my round 1. So all good. 3 wins for us on the first rounds. On
Yeah.
to
What was the
round
score at
2.
the end of your game, Chris?
Oh, 90. I think it was 93.57 is what I've got it on my ITC app. I've got to be honest, I don't have the BCG
I
thing.
have the official score here, so allow
You
me
can
to
tell me then.
I shall tell you the scores on the doors. The score at the end of your game was 93 to 57.
Perfect. There you go. I've actually recorded it right on the ITC app for once then. So yeah, first round's good. Let's move on to round 2. Let's go back to Alan. Round 2, opponent, mission.
Yeah, so round 2, not one of my favourite missions. Data Sky Salvage, another 6 objective missions. This is the one where you've got 1 in each of the deployment zones, diagonal deployments, and then you've got 4 objectives in the middle, skewing over a diagonal, and you have to do an action on your objective in your deployment zone. Now, luckily with this, it can be done with any unit, but obviously I do run 2 units of Poxwalkers who can't do actions, so they were not able to do anything with that. Opponent was Fulvio, part of Hordo Hispanics, who we actually played one of their teams in the ITT. So I met Fulvio down there, and we didn't play against his team in particular, but great guy, great opponent. He was saying to me that his English wasn't as good as it, but it was certainly very good. I was saying,
What was he running?
He was running an Armiger list. Imperial Knights. So he had brought an Armiger list along. Now, luckily, I had played against a similar list like this before. Our Knight Mark, he has an Armiger list that he runs. We've played a few times, and unfortunately, he just doesn't feel it's that competitive at the moment with certain things. But hopefully, with the new Chaos Knight book coming out, and
Yeah. All
hopefully
changes this
on
week.
the horizon. Yep, that could all be changed. But in this game, I knew where the threats were coming from. I knew what to do, and again, it just comes down to rolling dice, making sure you're scoring your points and things like that. I got first turn, which again helped because I was able to throw things out onto the points quickly. I was able to establish a bit of board control, and I was able to get, because obviously the knights are a bit huge, so he didn't have any big knights, but all the wee ones, when you're trying to put them into deployment zone, there's a few that are standing out in the open. And I know from previous experience as to shoot one, kill one, shoot one, kill one, which is exactly what I took to do. And obviously, I think his thinking was he had his big auto cannons at the back, 72-inch range, but he kept them right at the back. And what that led to was me picking lanes where he couldn't quite shoot everything straight away, so he had to bring them out and maneuver them. So always in a game, it's a game of dice, and dice can spike. And I think I killed 3 Armigers in the turn 1, and the Volkites were just going off at that point, and it was just that unfortunate way. He also had brought which was an unusual one. He brought a Vindicator Assassin. So he took Assassinate, and at that point, all that led me to do was not bring my characters out into the open. if I didn't
Yeah.
have to. And I actually took psychic interrogation, and I was able to farm psychic interrogation through this one character that he was trying to get close enough to do something with. So that played a bit into my hands. Then we got to turn 2, and he made a good few manoeuvres. He had to advance a few things to get into the points. And unfortunately, in this game, he had to leave an armiger at the back doing an action to score extra points for the primary, and that hurt as well, because in that list you can't really have a big unit at the back sitting doing an action like that, because you just take out the game. It's like when you're talking about tear down the icons. I don't normally do it till turns 4 or 5 because I can't have Deathstride sitting doing it. I can't have Poxwalkers doing it anyway. The cultists normally die, so I usually have to wait for an opening in order to plant a bomb. But in this game against Fulvio, in turn 2, I think I'd done too much damage, and I'd positioned myself out of range of everything else because these other things only had like 30-inch range, and they were having to stay back on points because I'd killed too much at this point. So you couldn't then maneuver to come and kill stuff. And you do get to that point in the game sometimes, although we were having a great game the first 2 and we're always chatting and we're always getting on, it can get a bit frustrating when you feel like you can't do anything. So instead of just keep rolling the dice, keep rolling out, and just being super oppressive to Fulvio, we just talked the rest of the game out, and then we sat and had a lovely chat for a while. You know, we're catching up on what he had been doing and things like that, because it's just sometimes that's the way it goes. If it spikes, you can't make your saves. He felt like he couldn't move forward. My combat threat to counter was too high. He had manoeuvred things wrongly, and at that point, I was just like, well, if I'm happy to keep rolling dice if the opponent's happy to keep rolling dice. At that point, if they're not happy to continue, I'm happy talking it out so we can just sit and relax and
it's
chat
part
and things like that.
It's part of the social contract, isn't it? That if they want to roll and play dice, great, roll and play dice, but you're both there to have fun ultimately. And if it's just easier to talk it out and then have a wee chill session afterwards, no worries. Yeah. But what was the final score? Sorry for that one.
So I believe now I'm going to have to try and guess this, but hopefully
don't worry, I am on the case.
I can get that, but I think I scored 100 in that game to I believe 38.
No, it was 42.
42.
Taking those 5 points from Fulvio, you monster. I know, but like you say, it's just it's a hard counter, unfortunately, especially if you've got one night out of the game just to do actions sort of thing. You really can't afford to do that, and then if the dice are against you, like you say, your Volkites are just going off. Mortal wounds are not knights' friends. You know? So.
And Fulvio plays Death Card, you know, he was very surprised on how well it played, and I explained to him the sort of tactic that had gone down, that I'd played this list before, that I'd put a combat threat on one side that I knew he wasn't going to go near because he knew what they could do. So he pushed his army down the other side, which is where I created just the firing lanes to shoot and just stay out of his range, which is what inevitably crippled him.
It just worked really well by the sounds of it, yeah. So, good second win, pushing the top tables there, Alan, by the sounds of things now. Ryan?
Getting a nosebleed.
My game 2 was against Simon Fitzpatrick from Team Scotland. So, we've encountered our first Team Scotland member of the tournament. Simon was a great opponent. It was an absolute... it was a nail biter of a game when it came down to it in the end. So Simon was running his Eldari. He's running lots of Dire Avengers with the AP. When they roll 6s to hit, those explode, but also count as 6s to wound, so they auto-rend.
Oh, is it Hail of Doom or something?
Yeah, that's the one, which is incredibly brutal against my Grey Knights. And I, on that mission, I taken to the last, which was probably a misstep from me, but I taken to the last, I taken Purifying Ritual, and I taken Engage on all fronts. In hindsight, I probably should have taken banners and stranglehold, and not to the last. Keep my purifying ritual there, but it was it was rough. So I managed to I got first turn, and I just pushed up my paladins. Basically, it's 6 objective mission. I need to just try and get some board control. He forward deployed a unit of rangers on one of the objectives, and I thought, great, I'll try and slingshot off of that unit with my unit of paladins. Now Simon told me before I'd done it that they have a strat to -2 to my charge. So It was going to be a 6-inch charge, became an 8. Still made that first turn, so that was great. I managed to get on, because Terminators are slow, they actually struggle to get on their points first turn. But I managed to get on, because of how close they are together, I managed to chain them out and get them on 2 different objectives and to kill the unit of Rangers off it. Which was brilliant. Managed to get it, hold it, but then there was all the Dire Avengers popping out of his Wave Serpents, which hurt. They came out, they rained fire. He had to throw everything in the kitchen sink into one unit to fully kill it, luckily, but he still managed to kill one of my units turn 1, which is a big blow.
I was about to say, when you've got big units and you're not got like lots of little units, you know what I mean? One big unit, was it one of the 10-man squads, sorry?
It was the 9-man unit of paladins that lost. So luckily I still had the 10-man unit of paladins next to them to try and go back on the objectives. So my turn 2, I kind of thought, oh, this isn't going great this game. I think I just need to try and damage control. I think I lost when I picked the secondaries, really, but damage control I did. I managed to take out 2 units of Dire Avengers, a unit of bikes. Unfortunately for me, Simon picked to the last, which normally for his list he wouldn't take, as his to the last is 2 Wave Serpents and what is the name of the character? The Swooping Hawk.
Baharoth, or whatever his name is.
Baharoth, yeah, that's that one. Yeah, so that was his to the last. 2 Wave Serpents and Baharoth. I have Stormbolters. I'm not killing a Wave Serpent. Baharoth teleports whenever he shoots. I'm not getting Baharoth. And I was like, well, he's got 15 points on that one. But nevertheless, I tried. The real thing that Simon struggled with was primary. Even with the secondary, so the secondary for this was just essentially you get a point for every objective not in your own deployment that you have. So if you perform the action on your home objective, you get 1 point for each objective out of your deployment. So he managed to do that, and he managed to get 2 points for that on 3 turns and 1 point for it on 1 turn. And the first turn he didn't get it at all. And even with that, he still only scored 35 for his primary. I really did a good job at keeping him off those primaries, but I just couldn't stop his secondaries. He managed to score 12 for Retrieve Nachmund. He managed to get 15 for To the Last, and he managed to get 10 for Engage on All Fronts. I managed to deny him getting the 4th quarter pretty well, but just, he consistently got 2 for every turn.
Yeah. Eldar being engaged usually.
The unit of jet bikes could just fly about and get it. Yeah, it's really good. But so I managed to get 45 for primary because I managed to, for round 2, hold more than him. So I got a full 12 for that, plus 2 for the first turn for data intercept, 3 for the second turn, 3 for the third turn, and 2 for the fourth turn. So that really helped me in the later rounds, bump that up to a 45. For Warp Ritual, Psychic Ritual for Grey Knights, I managed to get 13 out of 15, which was pretty good. To the last, I only got 5. And Engage on All Fronts, I only got 8. So I kind of struggled with Engage on All Fronts.
Yeah.
The score
Oh, go on, sorry.
I was just going to say the score at the end was 82 to Simon, 81 to me.
Oh, so close.
Incredibly close. And I think that's when I'm saying if I chose something else instead of To the Last, it could have swung the other way.
Oh, definitely. But I mean, sounds like you know what you could have done differently, and still, with a game not going your way from turn one, to eke it to a point difference, nearly a draw, to be honest.
Yeah.
Definitely not a bad performance by far, sort of thing.
Yeah,
I'll
definitely.
I'll quickly run through my second game. So interestingly, my second game was actually your first mission, which was recover the relics. I played against Reese, who had taken Thousand Suns. I quite like his list because it's made up of about 3 data sheets. It was 50 Rubricae. Each one had a Soul Reaper cannon in it, and then a big squad of 10 Scarab Cult Terminators. He'd taken Araman, and I think it was an Exalted Sorcerer on disc and a Demon Prince. So this one, as you guys had said in the first round, short board edge deployment, 6 objectives. I took, to the last, as always, I took the Tau specific secondary, which is decisive action, which is kind of like diluted Stranglehold, to be honest. It works really well on 6 objective missions, because what you do, you can only score it turns 1, 2, and 3 if you're taking Montka, or 3, 4, and 5 if you're taking Kauyon, and it caps at 12 points. But all you need to do is at the end of your turn hold half or more, not just more. You just need to hold half of them. So in this one, you can hold 3 of those objectives and you're scoring 4 points for the first 3 turns. So it's really easy to get it for 12. So if you're struggling with stuff, that's always a nice one to take. So I took that. I took To the Last, and I'm going to double check what I took for my third one. I think it was Banners. Let's have a weekender. Yeah, Raise the Banners. So, unfortunately, and to spoil it a wee bit, I lost this turn one by being too conservative. I got first turn. He had put most of his Thousand Suns behind ruins, apart from there was a big bit of dense terrain in the middle of the board. Again, this is sort of the change with sort of having what's it called? Player place terrain. He put 10 Rubicae in there, and what I did was I not 100% sure why on hindsight, but I should have taken turn one and just pushed out with my crew to stop him. He'd taken Cult of Duplicity, where you can sort of do that, sort of like redeploy psychic power, a bit like Gate of Infinity. And I should have just pushed out with the crew. What I'd have done instead was like wrap my home objectives, but all that led to for the rest of the game was meaning me holding back on my own objectives rather than, sort of having a push on his primary, and he could just keep a sorcerer or, a unit of Rubicae sitting there all game, not having to worry about it. He took Mutate Landscape and Raise the Banners, I think, and then no prisoners. So if he's taking Mutate Landscape and Raise the Banners, he's just scoring them pretty easily because I'm not threatening his primary, and he would just hurl 10-man squads of Rubicae into terrain or straight at me. And with Armor of Contempt and All is Dust, where damage 1 stuff just becomes, they get +1 to their save. Even with 2 big blobs of crisis suits, it was difficult to take out the Scarab Occult Terminators and stuff. I did manage to get rid of them, but it wasn't until he'd already taken a primary off me for that. And then he was able to just keep feeding Rubicae into me, with everything being on second his list, pretty much all the squads at least. I was just on the back foot all game with that until sort of like the end, where he was also then just like taking my banners down and stuff like that. So he scored a solid 100 for that, and I got 70, I think, for that one. Really fun game. Reese was absolute laugh to play against. We had so much fun in that game, but I just, from the moment I sort of started seeing where it was going turn to, I was like, I just should have been more aggressive and padded things out and pushed him back and, threatened his primary, but you live and learn, sort of thing. So yeah, that was mine. So unfortunately, 1 for 1 at the end of that. And we'll jump quickly onto round 3. Alan, where are you now?
Yeah, now gone 2-0 and heading into a big match against Matthew Gibson. Team Scotland, big shout out to Matthew because he'll probably be listening. But me and him have had a grudge. He's always said that Death Guard aren't great, which technically it's true. You know, they're not an S tier army by any stretch of the
No.
imagination, and they're definitely not.
Unless
You know,
you're
In your
using them.
hands, Alan.
oh,
Yeah.
unless I'm using them, yeah. I've got to say, it's probably all down to the Volkite boys, but yeah. So it was funny you mentioned you were playing Thousand Suns because that's what I was going into this game. Matty was running Thousand Suns. He had 2 bricks of 10 Scarab Occult Terminators. He had, think about, I think 4 groups or 5 groups of just the normal Marines.
Yeah, the
Um,
rubriques.
Yeah, the Rubriques, aye. And then he had Araman, Sorcerer on disc. And then I'm sure he had something else. The difficulty with this was I think he was running a sort of conversion of the Fallen Angels look to them, so it was kind of hard to remember exactly what it was. But Matty kept me right on everything that where it was at the time, and it's always good to talk to your opponent with intent and just get back and forth, especially if you're like, oh, these aren't like normal models, but you know. It was fine. He kept me right as we were going. In this game, we were playing the Scouring, which is not the best for me. It's not my. This is the worst mission I could have came on because it intends everything to be in the middle. And obviously he's got 2 bricks of Terminators. He's got all the other wee bits he can do. He forward deployed a unit, which was interesting. Obviously, he'd got first turn, that would have disrupted a bit of the back line. So in this game, I took the staple Stranglehold. I took to the last, which is my Demon Prince and 2 Contemptors, which is really good because they sort of stick together. And if something's coming in close combat, then the Demon Prince is there to take them out, and he is quite tough with a 5-up Invuln, a 3-up save with Armour of Contempt, and which seems really weird that he gets that, but never mind. Hopefully, I think at some point because there's no real armor on him. But you know, blessed by Papa Nurgle, you can't complain. And the 5-up Feel No Pain that I give him, as well as the Insect Hive, which is full rerolls. But I have been toying with maybe taking the Serpent Plate, which would give him a 2-up save, which works really well with Armour of Contempt.
Yeah.
Just for that. But I've toyed with both, but I've stuck with the other one just now because the full rerolls is nice. And the third one I took was No Prisoners because he was running Cult of Time. So he was bringing models back. I think he gave out 13 straight away. So any models that he gave back were just given that extra piece to it. So I got first turn. So straight away made sure I was on the middle point. I just chuck out a Unity Cultist. They get on it quite the thing. Luckily, I made the correct rolls for that, which was nice. That's always a risk with just being a slow army. But did that, had Death Shroud set up. He had set up a couple of units out in the open. So I took that moment in time to use Volkites to pull them into position to shoot them. I knew that Matty had the ability to use the crystal to jump forward a unit, which I wanted them to use sooner rather than later, because it's a bit like when they play Necrons, when you've got that sort of Veil of Darkness technique, you're like, you kind of want to get the opponent to use that early doors instead of having it later in game where they can maneuver somewhere where there's like a pocket open after they blasted you. So I moved all the juicy stuff into a sort of line of open, but making sure I had a counter punch to it. And I think at this point, I think what got in Matty's head was that he didn't understand how I was doing so well with the list. So he was like, I'm going to take this opportunity and I'm going to fire these shots in because he had the ability to shut down. Because I think he had the relic or there was something where he was able to pick a visible unit and just take away all the modifiers. So no minus to hit, no -1 damage, everything like that. And he decided to fire down on one Contemptor and possibly try and get another. But due to Army of Contempt and other things, he only managed to kill one. So I did lose I did lose points on that when he took out one. But then I started two Contemptors, and then because he had now brought out both groups of he had brought out both groups of Terminators. They were now in range for me to make a counter charge, which is what I was hoping for. Because then what I did was I pulled out all the tanks, I moved everything into a range of shooting one, and then I brought out the other ones to then charge with the Death Shroud into the other group. So what I was hoping for was I kill one with shooting, or at least reduce it to one model or two, and then in the other side, I decimate them in combat, hopefully killing everything with rerolls and stuff, or maybe taking them down to, maybe half strength or something like that. What happened in turn was that I killed 17 Terminators in that turn. I left them with two in one unit and one in the other. And because of I managed to roll an 11 on one of the charges, so I was able to catapult. Just like Ryan was saying before, Terminators move slowly, so if you can get a catapult charge off,
Yeah.
and now that they've got OBSEC as well, they're just a harassment tool. So at this point, when 17 Terminators went down, I knew exactly how Matty was feeling because I think when you lose the main crux of the army, as well as there was Poxwalkers doing other damage on the other side, he was having to keep units on points. Araman was having to heroically intervene to get in on the action and do stuff. And then when he was trying to get off, the damage spells, luckily in one turn, I managed to deny a few of them. So Doombolt didn't go off. There was something else didn't go off. His Kabbalistic ritual points had been reduced, and then it just stapled from there. And what was funny in that thing was the foul Blightspawn had got into combat, and what would normally happen then is if I haven't killed what's there and somebody goes for the foul Blightspawn, he normally dies. But with Armored Contempt, and they've only and with -1 on that, I was able to save him, so he was then alive. So they're making things fight last again, where they would normally, be able to do something to fight first, or when they charge in.
Such
and
a
then
powerful ability.
yeah, it just changed the game up again. And again, it came to the point where I was happy to keep rolling out if Matty wanted to, but there was so much lost by that point. We just talked the rest of the game out, and Matty then realised exactly. He was like, he came out too aggressively. He could have played it a lot more conservatively, and it would have been a trading game, and it would have been a lot tighter. Which I said to him I said that was totally the case that could have been.
Well, if you can pick up 17 Terminators, definitely need to be worrying about that shooting. Definitely.
Yeah, and that was the crazy thing. That was even with another Volkite dead. So if I had that other Volkite there, I would have destroyed mostly everything. Which is just nuts to think about at that moment in time. But no, Matty was a great opponent. We had a great game throughout. And I managed to finish the day on 3-0.
Nice. What was the final
nice.
score, sorry, for that one?
So the final score, I was going to have to.
Sorry, I shouldn't be asking you. I should be asking Ryan. This, shouldn't I?
No. But I'm going to try and guess this one again. I'm going to try and guess this one again. So I believe it was something like 89 to me.
Yes.
Yes, because stupidly, and this is what I would say to everybody, is even when you're talking things out, and we were playing quickly at that time, I did bring a Demon Prince out into the open, which then all of a sudden he decided to bring a character back, which I wasn't aware of, and he came and he flew and shot something, which is quite alright, because that just happens, you can't see in hindsight and go, oh well. But yeah, it was 89, and what would Matty's score have been? Maybe in the 50s?
It was 42.
42, yeah.
So 3 good wins, I would say, there at the end of that day. Alan must be quite happy with that at the end.
Yeah, very, very. Coming into this tournament, I wasn't, just because of, you see the armies coming in, Eldari, Harlequins, other things. Thousand Suns, with Army of Contempt, very difficult to chew through. I wasn't sure I was going to be able to manage it. Armiger list again, it can spike, it can save. But yeah, no, definitely very happy with a 3-0.
Grand. And on to you, Ryan.
Yeah, I'll try and keep it quick because I realise that going through these games can take its time. But another Team Scotland game for me. I was against Chris Irvin this time. Kind of mirror match, not really mirror matchup, but an armor of contempt matchup here. Obviously myself with the Paladins. Chris, he had salamanders with lots of Terminators with Lightning Claw Stormbolters, and then 3 Redemptor Dreadnoughts as well. This matchup was really interesting. He also had a unit of Incursors to forward deploy to try and get him an easy Oath of Moment at the start.
Yep.
I managed to get first turn, and very much like what we were saying about the slingshot technique, I used that unit of Incursors to slingshot a unit of 10 Paladins right onto the middle point, because Chris taken Oath of Moment. So I was like, okay, I need to try and get guys on that point, and I need to try and just stop Oath of Moment. So we managed to get that unit charged, but he had 20 Terminators with Stormbolt or Lightning Claws. So I had 10 Paladins. I managed to get my armor save increased on the unit, so they were on a 1-up armor. I then was in Tide of Shadows, so I got cover if they were more than 12 inches away. Sadly, they weren't, but it's only Stormbolters I've got for shooting anyway.
Yeah.
And then also Armor Contempt. So they were sitting on a nice 0-up save in close combat because of the increases that I gave them. So Lightning Claws were getting nullified. Chris smashed back and charged me with 20 Terminators into my 10 Paladins. All I had to do was have that unit survive, and then I could countercharge with my 2 units of Paladins. And Paladins, with their close combat weapons, psychic powers, and everything, they've got more attacks, they hit better. They're a bit superior to the Terminators. And really what happened was this bait unit of Paladins was in the middle objective, and Chris had no option but to go for them. There's nothing else he could have done. It's my to the last. It's his Oath of Moment. He has to charge it. So he charged everything in, and at the end of combat I was left with 3 Paladins. So he only killed
20 Terminators
20 Terminators with Lightning Claws, using stratagems to put them in the Assault Doctrine, 6s to wound, do double damage. I was left with 3 Paladins. I was quite smart with how I did my saves, so he gave one of the units 6s to wound, do double damage. So that turns a Lightning Claw into 2 damage. So what I'd done is, all the attacks for that happen at the same time, because it's just 6s spike. So you have to roll it all at once. So he had a pool of dice, and he's like, here is 15 saves at 2 damage, like 20 saves at 1 damage. And it was all just 2-up saves. My Paladins have 3 wounds each, and an Apothecary feel no pain, because I managed to chain them out so the Apothecary was still in range. So all I'd done was go, cool, I'm going to start taking my 2-up saves until one goes down to 1 wound.
Yep.
And then I'm going to take a 2 damage save when one's on 1 wound.
Because
both pools are there and both have went through. So I just kept going 2 up for 1 damage, 2 up for 1 damage, 2 up for 1 damage, rolling it 2 at a time. And then when I failed it, I'd done my feel no pains. And then eventually when they hit 1 wound, I was like, okay, 2 damage. 2 damage, 2 damage, and went through them until that guy died, and then I rinsed and repeated. So it basically nullified that strategy completely.
Yeah.
That kind of aided in being left with 3 Paladins. And then after I was left with the 3 Paladins, I mean, his Redemptor's done quite well. They managed to take one of my units of Paladins down to a 5-man, but I then just countercharged the middle. Once I'd taken out all these Terminators, he had to start throwing the Dreadnoughts into close combat in the middle. Which Caldor Drago loved. You know, we just went chip chopping. It was just, once they got into close combat, I changed my tide to the Tide of Conviction, so I could do 6s to wound, do mortals in close combat, and then the Dreadnoughts fell in close combat, but he managed to get Oath. But it was the kind of the bait unit of Paladins did a lot of work for me that game, and at the end it was 95 to 37. It was a really big win for me on that one.
Definitely, and like you say, I think it's just like how resilient Terminators are after that, Armor of Contempt. And it's unsurprising to see him sticking his lightning claws on Terminators, but I think there's a big question is like, is it even worth taking Storm Shields anymore? But obviously your guys don't even have that option, but they still stick around and with
Yeah,
pluses
the
to their
psychic
saves. So,
power. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. No, not bad at all. I'll quickly run through my last game of day one. So I was against Dave from Third Pillar Gaming. He was running Salamanders as well, actually. And he was running, I think it was quite a few aggressors, some eradicators, a dreadnought. He had a smash chaplain on bike. They were all painted like the Emperor's spears, so that sort of light blue with white helmets, and he'd done some great converting with them, sort of thing. Like if you've ever read that book from Aaron Dembski Bowden, there's a big sort of feral-looking, slightly wolfy guy on the front, and so he had a librarian that looked just like him. He was great, sort of thing. But what was this on this mission? This was Death and Zeal. He had also taken Oaths of Moment for his one, and what else? He had taken Engage on All Front and Retrieve Nachman Data. He had a few units of either Incursors or Infiltrators for stuff like that. And you also had some Land Speeders, which obviously made sense with Engage then. I took Stranglehold to the last and Retrieve Nachman Data. And really, it came down to quite a bit of sort of trading. I think he committed a lot to the center of the board turn one, and I was able to just jump out with 2 units of Crisis with commander buffs to reroll ones and extra AP. Annoyingly, obviously Salamanders had their chapter tactic changed, so you can't reroll wounds against them anymore, which is actually quite big for Tau because you can't benefit from Montcar or the Exemplar of the Montcar Warlord trait that would normally let you reroll all wounds. So I actually did feel that, but
Did
it
you
was
go
just way...
Caillou in that game then?
I went Montcar still because I wanted to be able to advance and still shoot.
Ah,
turns 1,
okay.
2, and 3. But I did consider it. But I think just with being able to push up onto other objectives quite quickly, he committed a lot to the first to the center, and I was just able to keep rinsing through it. And I think he did manage to tag one of my crisis suit units either turn 2 or 3, but then that's where the crisis commander came into himself. The drones took plenty of shots and survived. The crisis suit survived, and then they just jumped back out of combat with the crisis commander and shoot. I did some slightly janky stuff where I had a 20-man unit of crew pushing for one of the objectives on the flank, and he'd moved a land speeder to get an engage on. He put it on top of a sort of like it was like a cargo container, and my crew were at the bottom of the cargo container, or just out of engagement range vertically. But crew have a 1 CP strat where they can heroically intervene in the 6. So I used that for them to climb the cargo container, tag the land speeder, and the rest of the crew were technically moved closer towards it, but also happened to move on to an objective in his charge phase, sort of thing. And that just just really helped with primary in the end. So really fun game though, actually. Dave was such a good laugh, to be honest. I cannot remember what the score was for this. 97-75 is what I've got written down, Ryan.
Let's see if it adds up to what is on BCP. 97-78.
Oh, right, there you go. It was close enough, but yeah, really good fun game. Good way to end sort of day one when you've already had 2 games beforehand, sort of thing. Really nice sort of simple trading, but I think I just had the weight of firepower to deal with him. We'll quickly scoot on. Game 4, day 2. No rest for this right now, Alan. You've got to go straight into it. day
No rest for the wicked.
Game 4. What are you playing?
Well, day 2, game 4, I was playing Simon Fitzpatrick, and Ryan obviously played him the day before. So we were playing to go into obviously the top 2 for playing for first. And as Ryan said before, I spoke to Simon before the game, and he's telling me he's got 220 shuriken shots, and I'm just sitting there going, "Excuse me," and they explode on sixes, and they do this and they do that. And Ryan, correct me if I'm wrong, but it was Death and Zeal we were also playing in.
Yeah.
Yeah, the start of the day. So I had real difficulty with this mission because it has a lot of movement. Eldari have a lot of movement. And I went in with the game plan where I could either sit back and he comes to me and he takes me off all the stuff and he, out obsects me and he shoots me and he kills me and it's really difficult to go with. Or I could try and go to him and take the game to him and play it that way. So I decided to take Assassination, Grind, and Stranglehold. Because I thought if I'm getting grind, I'm killing things, and if I can get to characters, I'm getting characters. And I went with the game plan to disrupt his primary and to kill as much as I could to then push out later on. Unfortunately, I got first turn, and that's where it went downhill from. Because with getting first turn, he was able to hide everything
Yeah.
and just keep everything away. So I didn't have much to shoot at apart from, again, out of line sight shooting into Rangers. He was able to forward play Rangers, and they're too far away in Death and Zeal to be able to get a catapult off this time. And I shot 3 out of line of line of sight. Apologies.
Yeah,
But
playing Death Guard, I suppose.
they were incredibly rubbish because it only killed one ranger. One ranger died from night line sight shooting. It was rubbish, and that just reiterated into the fact that these are going to have to get played in a different vein from there out. And
Yeah.
we traded back and forth. The first 2 turns were very close. I had an excellent turn 2 where I managed to kill one of his wave serpents, which he was then protecting a character with, so I killed the character. And you could see Simon's brain switch from, oh, okay, I thought I was having a comfortable game, to he's just done that and he's almost turned it. And then it came into, I'm going, Baharoth jumped to another point to land on a point, and things were just moving all over the board. And as Ryan said, he just kept bringing out the Dire Avengers to do all the shooting, and it was just awful because every time they came out, anything they looked at, they destroyed.
Yeah.
And I knew that if I we had a chat afterwards. Unfortunately, I didn't win that game. I think it was somewhere in the 80s for him, somewhere in the 69s for me. So it was I still scored really well from it, considering. If I hadn't got first turn, it might have swung the other way. But again, I couldn't be sure because Eldari are always a tough matchup for Death Guard, just the movement and everything.
I was going to say they just get anywhere on the board and they trade up well. Like, yeah, you're gonna hit them on the counter, but they kind of don't mind that because they've got plenty to trade with.
Yeah, because we talked about it. So you could have done some things differently. I said, yeah, but then your gameplay would have been different, and it still would have worked out the same. If I'd taken to the last, it would have just made sure he came for my units because then he doesn't have to worry about anything dying because I don't have grind.
Yeah.
If I didn't take assassination, his characters would have been all over me all the time. But with taking that, it kept them back a bit, so that wasn't too bad. But Simon was a great player, and it was a really good game. Enjoyed it.
Good. And Ryan, game 4?
Game 4 was it was Shire Knights versus Shire Knights on this game.
Friendly fire.
Yeah, a little bit of friendly fire on this one. I drew into Connor with his Nids. And me and Connor have had many practice games, and we know that this game comes down to dice, really. My army is poised in a way that I get some easy denies. I've got a relic that I auto deny on an unmodified 8, the Sanctic Shard. So really, it was how much of his psychic can I stop? How much of my psychic can he stop?
What lovely list is Connor running, remind us all?
Connor is running Tyranids with 2 Malceptors. It was 2 Horospexes, a Parasite, the Killy Hive Tyrant, and an Exocrine. It's a super strong list. It's awesome. But unfortunately for him, I I denied every single one of his psychic powers for the first turn, except for, I believe, Catalyst and one other buff that he got off because the Neurothrope was out of range. Everything else got denied. It was a great first turn for me. Second turn, I denied everything again. And then I managed to get, so it was 5 objectives. I taken Stranglehold. I managed to deny him Stranglehold for 3 turns. On one turn, when he was going to get Stranglehold, he got the Parasite on the point, released the Ripper Swarms with a Parasite, charged me with a Parasite, and then all he had to do was infect me.
Mm-hmm.
And he failed to wound me with the one attack that infects with a CP reroll. So all he needed was a 3, and he had a reroll, and he didn't get it. So I still had Obsec, so I Obsec'd him off the point with a unit of Strike Marines. It was one single Strike Marine on the point where he had Rippers and the Parasite and a Hive Tyrant on it. The Hive Tyrant was in combat with Kaldor Drago, so it couldn't have interfered with that combat. But yeah, it was a really, really, really unfortunate game for Connor. I think it was also a very, very close game, even with me denying all the powers. It shows you how strong the Nids are right now. It was 88 to 84. Very, very close game. And if I didn't manage to deny the psychic powers the way I did, it would have easily been a loss for me.
I think that probably talks to like what you were saying right at the start of this, where you're sort of built a list to deal with Nids, and I think Grey Knights with +1 to deny a lot of the stuff with the Maleceptors and other buffs that Nids want to see getting up. You have that ability to maybe not stop all of them for 2 turns. That's a bit too much, Ryan. But
Sorry.
you can definitely have a good chance of shutting down a lot of that normally, sort of thing. Obviously, it's just played well there into Connor. So what was the score, sorry, at the end of that one?
It was 84 to Connor, 88 to me, so 4 points in it. It was
still really close, yeah.
Yeah. The Nids are very strong just now.
Yeah. But those poor Maleceptors, mate, not being able to do anything for 2 turns.
I know. I shut down the Maleceptors quite hard, but
what's that I can hear, guys? It's the smallest violin in the world.
Yeah, exactly.
Fucking awful.
What about you, Chris? How was your game?
Yeah, my game was against a guy called Johnson. He was playing Drukhari, which had been my bread and butter for the last 18 months before I moved on to Kroot.
So you knew it like the back of your hand?
I did. He was running sort of your very familiar 3 patrols, I think it was, and it was Cabal of the Obsidian Rose, which is extra range and reroll 1 wound roll on your shots. And he was running Cold of Strife with 2 Killy Succubuses. Drazar made an appearance as usual. Archon, that makes you fight last, was there to buddy up with him in sort of a buddy cop showdown. And he had some. He had actually something which was quite cool, which was a big blob of 15 Hellions, which is something I thought about doing before, and I do wonder, because while Hellions don't survive too much, there are some nice strats from the Cult of Strife supplement to give them things like 4-up invulnerables and reroll wounds and stuff like that, which obviously you're sticking on 1 unit of crazed Green Goblin impersonators can be quite tasty. So I was intrigued just to see that went, but he got first turn. What were we playing again? We were playing 2 seconds. We were playing Conversion. So again,
similar map style as our same map layout, table quarters, 10 inches away from the centre.
Exactly. I think a lot of the ones for the West of Scotland GT were this sort of 5-1 with table quarters and stuff like that, and this one was very much the same. I won the terrain roll off, which is obviously an interesting meta game in itself, sort of thing, and managed to place a bit of terrain quite favourably to me near the middle objective. Thoughts on player place terrain another day maybe. And he got first turn. Now I managed to place sort of wraps of Kroot. The Kroot did their job this time, where they were just there to slow down any fast moving Drukhari turn 1 and stuff like that. and I think in my first turn he'd left like 2 raiders out and some reavers and some a venom or something like that, and I managed to pop all these boats and all the reavers just with like weight of fire again. You know, even with sort of like -1s to hit, the crisis commander again came on his own because he just ignores to hit modifiers on a unit. So it was like, you can put that on, but I'm just gonna, you know, ignore it anyway. And then he managed to move some stuff forward, and I think it just came down to I took out all his anti-tank stuff, which meant like even if he, you know, you get into those crisis suits, all of them had like 4 up invulnerables with shield generators, and they had the shield drones, and their 4 wounds, toughness 5. If I've just got the crew to stop you getting stuff into combat and you can't shoot them, they're all game just to fire loads of shots away. I took Stranglehold, I took R&D on this one, and what else did I take? Oh, just closed ITC. I think it was probably... Sorry, guys.
You're all good.
Yeah.
It is, drum roll. This is so going to be underwhelming. Oh, it was Assassinate, because he had loads of these combat characters that I knew he would want to throw down my neck. I was like, well, you can kill some stuff, and then I'll just kill you and I'll score my primary, which
Yeah.
I remember doing as a Drukhari player and really hating when people took Assassinate, so that's exactly why I took it. Yeah, it worked out really well. I didn't manage to kill Vizar in the end, but because I managed to kill so much else, Drazar was left at the very end of the game, sort of hiding in a ruin on his own home objective sort of thing. He'd taken Herd the Prey, which is really good for Drukhari. It's this sort of anti-engagement front where you're knocking people out of corners, and because I had sort of a slower start, he did manage to pretty much max that, but I won that one as well. Like I said, I think it just came down to knowing what he was going to be, well, knowing what the list can do and stuff like that, and just having plenty of screening, getting rid of that anti-tank earlier, and not having to worry too much about what would happen to my units. So I think I've got it down as 95 to 67, but Ryan, correct me if I'm wrong.
Drum roll.
Oh.
It was 95 to 71.
Yeah, I actually, do you know what? I had a feeling he actually got into the 70s for that one when I said it. Totally honest. So yeah, a good game, really good fun. And so after 4 games, 3-1, it was quite fun actually. Yeah, it was good to be there. But we'll quickly do last games for everyone. I think we're all in 3-1 at this point. Is that right?
Yeah, all 3 of us were 3-1 at this point, going into the last game. It's all to play for that podium position.
I'm gonna actually change the running order up a wee bit. I'm going to quickly do my game 5, where we'll do it this way round for dramatic effect. My game 5, I played against Sean Baird, who seems to be every tournament, probably for the last 5 tournaments, I've ended up playing Sean at some point. And we're at one point, we were both running Drukhari, so it was constant Drukhari mirror matches. There wouldn't be a tournament I would go to in Scotland without playing Sean at some point. This time we had both changed. He was running Harlequins of the light variety. I was running, obviously, Matau. And the mission was, let's have a wee gander. It was Scouring this time, so your mission 3, I think it had been, but it was our final mission. Again, I took stuff like Stranglehold, I took R&D, and I took to the last. And he took one of the Harlequin specific ones. I can't remember its name, but it means pretty much if you get a unit onto an objective or something like that, and you can score 3 points. I can't quite remember how it works. But it started quite well for me actually, this one, because I managed to chuck a load of Kroot onto the middle objective, and I also managed to push a unit of Kroot up into one of his objectives. Now it was turn 1, so he's not having to worry about not scoring primary sort of thing, because I got first turn. But it's something he has to think about. He actually didn't manage to kill the squad of Kroot in the middle of the board. They got quite lucky. Kroot decent cover saves to get +2 to their save, and I think it just his rolling was he whiffed a wee bit with that. So on my first turn, I did actually manage to score all 3 for my primary and stuff like that. I think after that, I probably took my foot off a wee bit. Could again a bit like the Thousand Suns game, should have tried to capitalise that on that and push up and make him worry about his own home field objectives again. Long story short, really close game, but he was able to sort of counter punch at that point. Again, I think I've given him the opportunity to do so, and he had things like bikes, he had things like void weavers. There was lots going into the middle objective is just a meat grinder because we're both like wanting to get it for points or deny the other person points. Again, commanders sort of making things obsec that I can just throw into the middle of the board was really good. But in the end, it ended up I got it down here as 74 to me, 89 to Sean. I think that is actually
That
right.
is the correct score. Yeah, very close though. Very close.
Yeah, very close game. I think it actually turned on one of the last turns. I think turn 5 he managed to kill one of my 2 of the last units at that point, so that's 5 points. And I could have probably played my R&D a wee bit more, which would have been another 4 points, and then you can see it starts to make it quite close. But 3-2, very close last game, and Sean would actually end up finishing second overall down in air. So I think fairly respectable. I'm happy with that at least. But that was my tournament down in air. Really fun. Let's go with Alan then. Alan, game 5.
Yeah, game 5. To round off the day, we were playing Secure Missing Artifacts, which is the old priority target, so you get to move objectives. And I was going into a game against Gary Duffy, who was running Tyranids. So I've literally come out of Eldari to go into Tyranids. But either way, Simon went into Innis's Tyranids, so I was going into Gary's Tyranids. So luckily, as Ryan said, we've been having practice games, and I've been playing against Connor's list for a long time. And this game was literally just going to come down to the one dice roll, and it was a dice roll of who's getting first. Because I knew that if I was able to get first, there was a possibility if I could take down the Harpies, I'd have a chance. So I decided to take to the last in the mission. I took Stranglehold as always, and I took Bring It Down because killing big bugs they give enough off. And luckily in this game I did get first turn. And with that, the Volkites had range because it's very hard to hide the flyers. There was no line of sight blocking terrain where you had put the flyers. So because you want them, because they've got a 40-inch move and they fly over something to do damage on it, I had positioned in a way that it couldn't land to get to the juicy targets. So if he got first turn, he would be taking, either Poxwalkers or Cultists or, something I don't really want him to take with the bombs, but hopefully not shooting at anything that is a great target for him.
Yeah.
So luckily the Volkites had range. My Plague Burst Calls also had the range to go in. And he decided, and I think this is probably the one thing that probably swung the game, was that he decided to go into the 5-up mortals and pluses to his cast straight away instead of going into 4+ invuln. And I think what he was thinking was he was trying to save against the Volkites. But unfortunately, the rate of fire from the Volkites took one down. Now, when I took that one down, the other ones shot into the one that didn't have the synaptic links, so he didn't have an invulnerable. So it then cut through them a lot quicker than it probably should have. Because I just fired everything in. He's like, "Oh, you're not shooting out your line of sight someone else?" I was like, "Nope, I've had that all weekend.
I've done that. It's not worked. I'm not doing it again."
It's going nowhere for that. So, and he was running the 2 Harpies. He was running a Carnifex. I think he was running 2 Carnifexes actually in that game. He was running a Shooty Hive Tyrant, a Flying Hive Tyrant. He was running Tyrant Guard. He was running Venom Thropes, Zone Thropes, Neurothrope. He ran a group of 3 warriors. I think was it a Pyrovore maybe he was running, I believe.
Yeah, a
Yeah,
Pyrovore.
Pyrovore, yeah. And then he was running a group of 9 warriors together with double bone swords and things, and they just look nasty coming forward, especially when you put -1 damage on them, and they're 3 wounds each, toughness 5. So that was quite interesting. So no one, and I had the Malceptor as well, because another player coming to game without a Malceptor,
Yeah.
I don't know what they're doing. it's like leaving the house without harpies. But no, it was really good game. We had great fun. We talked to each other the whole time as we were playing, and it did just come down to that one roll off. And once the 2 harpies went down, I think Gary panicked slightly, and then in his turn, everything came rushing out. So his venom throats were out in the open, his zone throats were out in the open, there was like different things happening. He took warp ritual, and unfortunately, with his advances, it couldn't get into where he needed to do that. So the first turn he missed it, but then you're like, well, it's warp ritual, you can do it over 3 turns, so that's not too difficult. But then I kept chucking things into the middle as well, so I kept chucking cultists out, and because you can move the points, we had 3 points nearly out in the open in a firing lane, which I wasn't expecting to happen. But I lost the roll off to deploy, like to move the first one. So he moved the first one, I moved one, and then he pulled one of mine in the open, so I pulled his in the open. I thought, well, we're just going to have this line of, right, we're shooting each other.
Yeah.
Which was fair enough. And that's something just what happens in that game mode. But yeah, when he brought everything out, my Volkites were then able to capitalise on. It was just target priority then, so Venom Throats went down to take away the -1 to hit everything else. And then I chucked out a group of 3 units to try and take out the Tyrant Guard and just work my way through that. But NIDs are very difficult and very tough, and it was just literally on that turn 1 that I managed to win it on that. And Ryan, you're going to have to remind me of the score.
The score at the end of that game was
It was like 92, 93?
93 to you, 69 to Gary.
Yeah, 69 to Gary, yeah. And that was with me fully shooting everything all the time, taking things out. I had to, normally he took a Contemptor down to 2 wins. Normally I would just hide it to fire later on or just to save 5 points. I couldn't even do that because if that hadn't shot 1 round, he had something else coming towards me, and I was like, I can't have that. I'm going to lose 5 points. I'm going to lose 5 points. You know that way. But no, it was a great game. Gary was a great opponent. Brilliant to play against. And we've look forward to more games against these kids at some point.
That's the only time I'll ever hear you say that, I think, when it comes to NIDS. Sort of
Yeah,
thing.
I believe after an FAQ, I missed that bit out after that.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Oh, well, great. So 4-1 overall, Alan. Going into the tournament, you must have been quite happy with that result, considering sort of, as we say, Death Guard, apart from in your hands, obviously aren't an S tier list. When compared to Harlequins, Nids, of course, other top tier Eldar and stuff like that. So overall, quite happy with your performance?
No, extremely happy. I think over the last few tournaments, I said to Simon, I was going into his game, I was 16-0 with the list from, I think, Nottingham, which was great.
Nice.
I said, but Eldari and Nids, because I've played against Tau and Custode when they were at their top end, and the -1 damage and that works well, but Eldari and Nids and Harlequins, they just had that extra bit to it. Sidekick Mortal Wounds really does it, Obsec really does Death Guard. So at the moment, when I was going at that, I was like, if I win a couple, if I win 3, brilliant. 3 and 2 is what I sort of aim for. But I said, even if I just win a couple, because I expected there to be more high-end S-tier armies there, like Nids and those other things, and you just got to, just enjoy what you're playing, that way, and that's it.
But no, fantastic result, and we'll swiftly move on. Ryan, your last game of the weekend?
My last game was a mirror matchup. Old style Grey Knights against new style Grey Knights. Pre-armor contempt against armor contempt, essentially. So I was playing against Johnny from ELG. Johnny's an awesome guy. his list was the kind of old standard for Grey Knights. The 4 Dread Knights, one being a Grandmaster. Grandmaster has the 3-up Invuln, the teleport. He has a librarian. Wasn't a Mortal Windbomb librarian, but had like Sanctuary and stuff like that on him. He also had 1 unit of Terminators as well. And really, this game was. I think I had an upper hand going into the game because the one thing Grey Knights lack is big AP minus for shooting and big damage from shooting. So the big threat, Dread Knights, they're AP minus 2. You can up it to AP minus 3. Still not doing much if I get my armor off. And then they're only damage 2 or damage 1. He can up it to damage 3 if he gets his psychic power off. But once again, I've got the things in there to automatically deny and whatnot. It's quite difficult, and Grey Knights with their natural +1 to deny. So we're denying each other a lot. Going into their mirror matchup, I knew mirror matchups don't go well for Grey Knights for their secondary Purifying Ritual. So instead of taking Purifying Ritual, I taken Banners, I taken Stranglehold, and I taken To the Last. So I didn't have to cast any psychic powers.
That +1 to deny. Don't consider it.
Terrifying. It really does just shut down that secondary. But Johnny did take Purifying Ritual, and then he taken Stranglehold, and then the last one I am just getting up, but my ITC Battles app has just thrown me an advertisement. His last one was Raise the Banners as well. So on the mission, Raise the Banners, it's a 5 objective mission. It was an easy 10 points for us going in. So the match was I managed to get my Paladins on the center objective really early, which then denied him Stranglehold for 3 turns, which was massive. He managed to get Stranglehold on turn 1 and turn 5 of the game, which just really shut down it for him, and I managed to get it for all 5 turns. Really, there was one. So I managed to deny his secondary as well, the Purifying Ritual. He only managed to get 9 points for that. He got max for turn 1, and then he got 4 for turn 1. So he done it on 3 objectives turn 1. Turn 2 he done it on 2. Turn 3 done it on 1, and then turn 4 he done it on 2. And then he didn't manage to get it off at all on turn 5. A real kicker was I managed to get one of my 5-man strike squads to charge one of his objectives in his deployment and flip it off him with their obsec, because the unit charged. He had a unit of Strike Marines and a Dread Knight on it. I managed to charge the Strike Marines, slingshot off of them, kill them in combat, and then obsec the point off of them, which dropped the banners and stopped them scoring Purify for a turn because the Dread Knight got denied by the unit on there.
Yeah, quite a big flip at that point then.
Yeah, that really flipped it. And then it also cost him Stranglehold again. But that wasn't the biggest kicker of the game. So going into turn 4, I was feeling quite good, quite confident. I still had all my To the Last, still had my unit of Paladins. One of them was down to a 3-man, but my 2 back objectives were held by a 9-man and a 9-man respectively. So the 10-man in the middle, down to 3 guys, but I still had Caldor, Librarian, Chaplain, and Apothecary there with them. And I was just kept on bringing back a Paladin every turn. So if he didn't do something about them, they were going to come back. So this was his turn to try and claim the middle, get Stranglehold for 2 turns, and try and claw back as many points as he can to try and flip it and get the win. He had a 3-inch or a 3-inch charge with a unit of 5 Terminators, a 3-inch charge with a Librarian, and a 3-inch charge with a Dread Knight. He had no CP left, and he rolled double 1s for every charge.
Oh my god. What? How?
Yeah, exactly. Double 1s for every charge, and then in his turn 5, he perils on double 1s for each of his Purifying Rituals, and that pretty much sealed the game right there. The horrendous luck of Johnny on that just set it in stone, really. I managed to get a 95 to his 77. That turn 4 really just absolutely, ruined the game plan. But you can't. It's dice. You can't do much to prep for it. It was literally a 3-inch charge. He moved his max, and he made it as easy as possible as he could for the charge, and he failed it with all 3 units.
Yeah, that's. I was trying to quickly Google what the probability of that is, but I don't know if anyone's ever done some research on something so obscure. So
Not very high is the probability.
No, there would just be a waste of funding to research that because it's never gonna. Oh, oh my words! Yeah, it's that's a great game for you. Awful dice luck otherwise, but so that's you gone 4-1. Thoughts for the weekend for yourself? Anything you would be changing if you were taking that Grey Knights list again?
I think the chaplain was a bit ineffective. So the chaplain, I don't think I actually mentioned this, but the chaplain's litany was pick a unit and they ignore all psychic powers. Or they can choose to ignore psychic powers, which is great when you think about it. Smites, all this psychic screech, we ignore it. You just have to remember that it's on them, and for the whole tournament, I forgot it. And like critical moments were happening. Like I got that my unit of paladins got smite, and I lost 4 paladins from like psychic powers, which they should have never died because
you had an ability.
I had an ability to say no, they don't get affected. So just me misplaying that and forgetting about my litany was pretty crazy.
So what you would change from your list in the weekend would be a big post-it note would be saying, I can ignore psychic powers.
Yeah, or change it to something easier to remember, like a captain to give reroll ones to wound, but yeah.
And so overall, guys, if I'm right from list, and I've forgotten to bring BCP, so Alan, you ended up 3rd. And Ryan, you end up 2nd. Is that the right way round?
Yes, that is the right way round. Yeah. So I was going to say overall for the Shire Knights at Clash of Alba, we had myself 2nd, Alan 3rd. We had Connor with his Nids. This was his first individual tournament. He came 6th place. Great result. We had Nick with his Salamanders. Another great result coming in at 9th place. And then yourself over at West of Scotland GT coming in 10th place.
Yeah, just protecting the rear guard. That's exactly what I was doing. Yep, always planned for it. Yeah, no, a really good weekend, I'd say, for all of us involved. Definitely. Some good fun games by the sounds of it. Obviously, I'm in the interest of time, I shan't badger on for too much more. But quick thoughts, a sort of quick summary, Alan, of your weekend. Are you going to be taking Death Guard to the next tournament, which I think is next weekend, isn't it? It's the one there in Dominion.
Yeah. So I'm just about to put my list in, but I'm stuck with Death Guard at the moment. I think my plan is to try and get number 1 in the world with them if I can. It's very close up there at the moment. If Brett ever updates them, then we'll get there. But no. It's a very tough area because at the moment, obviously with Army of Contempt, they are a very played army.
Yeah.
We just have to see the meta at the moment is not the kindest just now. But yeah, I think I'm just going to continue with them for the moment. I'm trying not to jump on the Nid train. Trying very much. Looking
Plague Burst Crawlers hanging around for next weekend.
Potentially, yeah, I believe so. I've tried a few adaptations of taking them out and putting them in. The problem is when you take them out, the Volkites become the main targets. If you leave them in, folk try and kill because they're a bit tankier. If you take Morty just dies.
Yeah.
Unfortunately at the moment. So yes, so we shall see. But
maybe just playing them more directly, I suppose, so you're not having to worry about that.
Yeah. I'll just, because it always depends. So the tournament we're going to Dominion is RTT, so it's a 1-day event, 3 games. Hopefully I don't mean Nids. Hopefully I don't mean Harlequins. I doubt that's going to happen, but you never know. I can pray to Papa Nurgle and see what we come up against.
Definitely hope you avoid the Nids and the bugs. Ryan, what are you taking, by the way?
Bugs!
Well, there goes that idea.
No,
I'm just going to Dominion for lunch, guys.
So my bugs, I have had. Bugs were actually my first army back when Battle for McCrag first came out. Me and my brother split the box when I was 7, and I ended up with bugs. So I have had lots of bugs there. So I am not a meta chaser. I have helped write all the NID lists so far. That I helped Connor with his NID list and stuff like that, and helped Mark write his. But I haven't ran my own, so this is going to be my first time running my own list after writing all the other, helping write the others. So it's going to be interesting. I finally get to run the army.
I was about to say, you must know the book quite well, but it'll be actually putting that into practice, I suppose, which will be the interesting bit.
I'll forget loads. It'll be standard.
Get you some post-it notes.
Every NID player forgets those, but you know what? They still win.
Well, they're definitely in a strong place, so yeah, obviously, best of luck to both of you guys for next week down in Dominion. I think we'll probably leave it there today, guys. Thank you very much, obviously, for a sort of quite a thorough, counting of the sort of tournaments at the weekends. Well done to all the Shire Knights that took part, Connor and Nick as well, who obviously haven't managed to join us today, unfortunately, but still very good results for us all round. And otherwise, I suppose we'll just leave it there. Do you want to, say goodbye to us, chaps?
I shall give some parting wisdom, though. We'll probably have another podcast in the upcoming week, giving our results from the RTT, chatting about how it was. But just a reminder to listeners as well that are in the Scotland area or further beyond if you wish. The Forth Valley Wargamers are running a tournament, which we are all in attendance at, except from Alan, but he will be there, but just not playing. There is two tickets left for it. Should anyone wish to fill the slot, we've had a couple of dropouts over the weekend, so we're currently looking to fill up those slots. So if you want to get in touch with Forth Valley Wargamers on Facebook, you can get a ticket for that. It's £35. It includes lunch. It's in Falkirk, and it's a 2-day event, 5 games. At the end of this month, last weekend, it is the 28th and 29th of May.
Fantastic. I'm definitely looking forward to it, guys. It's a shame Alan won't be playing, so I can get my grudge on, but the rest of it will be good.
Yeah, it'll be a good one.
I saw those Cook coming, Chris, and I just ran away.
Definitely. Well, let's all say bye for now, guys. So, Alan, do you want to say?
Yeah, see you later, guys.
Ryan?
See you later.
And bye from me as well, guys. Cheers.
Bye bye.